Hi, my name is Ivan Thomas, Executive Director here at DETV, and we have partnered with ChristianaCare and the Franklin Institute to bring you this amazing program this evening. Did you know clinical trials are key to ensuring that new medicines are safe and effective? Racial and ethnic minorities have historically been underrepresented in clinical trials and continue to be for reasons ranging from access to mistrust. As medicines rapidly advance, it's increasingly important to close the diversity gap in clinical trials to tackle current health disparities and ensure marginalized communities can benefit from the medical breakthroughs of the future. However, barriers to participation remain, and sustainable solutions are long overdue. From the ethics of designing research to new strategies for improving reach and access. Now, meet these amazing individuals actively working on solutions for a more equitable future and hear perspectives gathered in advance from the community at large in a special live event tonight, moderated by Franklin Institute's own Chief Bioscientist, Dr. Gayatri Das. Tonight's panel includes Dr. Eric Kmek, Director of the Gene Editing Institute at ChristianaCare Health Systems, Jacqueline Crawford, ChristianaCare Health Systems nurse and participant in cancer research, Dr. Anya Harry, Global Lead Clinical Trial Diversity at GlaxoSmithKline, Holly Fernandez-Lynch, Assistant Professor of Medical Ethics, Perelman School of Medicine, University of Pennsylvania. Now remember, this event is totally interactive, so please type your comments in the comment field. Now let's get started.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gayatri Das, Chief Bioscientist from the Franklin Institute, and I'm so thrilled that you're joining us for this conversation tonight. It's an honor for us to be partnering with ChristianaCare Health System and DETV tonight for this conversation where we hope we can get you the information you need to make choices about participating in medical research and advocate for your health in ways that can benefit everyone. At the same time, it's a conversation. And we hope that the scientists and researchers on our panelists today, as well as those listening online and on TV, will have a chance to hear your comments and concerns and questions so that we can all work together to improve the systems that we have in place. So let me introduce you to the panelists that I'm really excited to be here in the studio with, thanks to the CDC's newest guidelines and getting vaccinated. This is the first conversation that I think I've had with people in person.
What a good feeling.
In a long time. Yeah, it's great. So Dr. Anya Harry, Director of Clinical Trials Diversity from GSK.
Thank you.
Jackie Crawford, you're a cancer survivor, and we're going to come back and get to know each of you a little bit better.
Thanks.
Dr. Eric Kmek, Director of the Gene Editing Institute at ChristianaCare. And joining us remotely is Holly Fernandez-Lynch, who is a professor of bioethics at the University of Pennsylvania. So as we get started, I'd like our audience to get to know each of you a little bit better, to hear the perspectives that each of you bring to the conversation. So Eric, let's start with you. You are one of these researchers, scientists who is on the front lines of developing new therapies. Tell us a little bit about what your research is about.
Yes, well, it's been a really exciting couple years, obviously, for those of us who are in genetic medicine, because we've finally evolved a series of tools that we think can help in standard of care. Genetic medicine sounds kind of imposing and challenging, and tonight we'll probably get to a point where we can talk a little bit about removing some of the myths and some of the hesitancy there is around using them. My work is basically to develop innovative tools for the treatment of certain kinds of cancer. We currently have a program walking through the FDA toward a clinical trial using a remarkable genetic tool called CRISPR. So our day jobs are essentially to make sure that it works effectively and safely. And we do that at the Helen F. Graham Cancer Center at ChristianaCare.
So your research is on a path towards what we in the business called clinical trials.
Right.
And that's a term that may or may not be familiar to folks. I think we've all gotten a little window into medical research over the last year. Right. But can you give us the quick nugget of what a clinical trial actually is?
Sure, and you know, it's a great question, Jatri, because I think there's a lot of misperception, not only culturally, but even within the general population, what clinical trials are. It sounds so sterile, clinical trial.
Right.
It's the wording, and I was interested in talking with Jackie not too long ago, but maybe we could change the language and soften it a little bit so we don't get so imposing. But clinical trials are essentially processes where we begin to evaluate healthcare in patients. And we're all very familiar with the big cancer drugs and the heart disease drugs and diabetes drugs. We call that a treatment trial. But there are also clinical trials involved in prevention, and prevention of certain diseases as cancer could be something as interesting as a clinical trial to see if you ride your bike 2 days a week. Do you feel better? Do you reduce your heart disease capabilities? Or even trials that involve taking vitamins or fish oil or something that augments a trial. There's also one that I think we need to really sort of improve on, and we might get to this topic later. It's called screening. And so screening is where people would go in and be screened for like a mammogram or something. And obviously Jackie has a lot of experience in this area, but in effect, screening of mammograms help reduce breast cancer onset in women for a long time, and the incidence of breast cancer, recognition of it, has diminished a lot. And then there's a couple others that are kind of interesting. One is a quality of life trial. I think we have probably 100 or 110 trials currently going on in the Cancer Center, and about half of them are for symptoms that actually occur because you're on a certain kind of drug. So you're involved in sort of taking a different type of an approach to something where you're having a good or bad reaction to a cancer drug. But I think one of the most interesting ones, and the last one, is called a natural history trial. This is a trial in which people are just discussing the natural history of their families, whether it's colon cancer, and that accumulation then goes into the database at the FDA. And just one last quick point. I know there's a perception of clinical trials as being grabbing a patient, but I can tell you from personal experience that there are hundreds of animal trials, cell-based trials, safety trials that go on before you actually appeal to the FDA to get permission to test it in patients. So the stigma about a clinical trial, by the time it gets to a group of people enrolling in clinical trials, it has already been through enormous amount of scrutiny by multiple levels of committees, both at the hospital, at the regional systems, and then of course at the federal government. So a very exciting trial with new innovative things, and not so less painful either. It's but I think that's actually a very good point, and it should be painful to get it through.
Yeah, I think that's a really great overview, because I think not only does it help us understand the range
Right.
of trials that are out there, the range of studies, that it's not just for people who are sick, that maybe
Exactly.
those of us who are healthy can get involved as well,
Right.
and think about how to stay healthy. That's just as important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jackie,